Back over here. What's going on? Let me move these objects from the background. That's not professional. Welcome back to Ground Zero Salem with Pat. Once again, I have a cassette and 7-inch update playlist, whatever, to throw at you. Got some cool stuff in the mail. Uncommon Pallor. Mike Woodford sent me a nice little care package with some tapes and some 7-inches. I have, I just went on an eBay binge like a month and a half or so ago, finding a bunch of classics that were relatively reasonable price-wise, some new releases and stuff like that. A couple of things that Amanda, my wife, gave me, she got doubles of. Kind of odds and ends, some stuff from Matt, the Dark Path, so a whole bunch of VCLT and some other shit. Speaking of shit, we're listening to Sick of Shit from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. This is part of Mike's package. It's good. It's crusty, hardcore, has a lot of different influences. The first track almost kind of sounded like something from Western Mass from the late 90s, just like real mean, nasty kind of sandpaper, John Brannon kind of vocals. But the next song went into like almost sort of a crust direction with growls. So they're kind of playing with a couple of different styles, and I like it. I like it a lot. That will probably end well before the video's over. It's a hardcore demo tape, so it'll be the Sweet Sounds of Silence after that. So at the top of the pile, we have the, I believe, third Whiplash record, Insult to Injury. Came out on Road Racer. I don't know what year. I think very early 90s. 89. And this was like a slightly revamped lineup where they got a singer. I used to have Ticket to Mayhem. I don't remember if that had a singer on it that wasn't playing an instrument or not. Don't remember off the top of my head. I remember not liking that very much when I was a child. I haven't gone back to it in a very long time. Of course, the debut is a fucking great thrash record, but this record's cool. You know, there's a lot more kind of melody involved than what they were doing before that I like so much. Very funny cover. Very, very typical funny thrash metal cover. Dude with in a wheelchair with a leg injury about to be hit by what looks to be a train. So yeah, good New York thrash with a touch of melody. Picked up Sabotage Sirens on Combat. The Combat pressing. Sabotage is a band that I know a lot of like straight up heavy metal people love a lot. They were a Florida band. I've had that EP, I think it was their first record, Dungeons Are Calling, for quite a long time, and I really like that. It's just a great, powerful, kind of dark, classic style heavy metal record. This is kind of along the same lines. The title track is a fucking great song, Sirens. Catchy chorus on that. I noticed even on this, which I think might be their first proper full length, or one of the early ones anyway. This is it has a few very commercial leaning, like hard rock kind of moments on it. Which is always where I'm kind of like, ugh, with a lot of classic heavy metal stuff, new wave of British heavy metal, early 80s heavy metal. It's the mid-tempo rockers that I tend to want to skip, and this has a few, but it's great, you know, fantasy-driven, fantasy-influenced American power metal stuff, heavy metal. Then we've got Venom's Primeval. This would be the first one with Demolition Man, a.k.a. Tony Dolan from Atomcraft. And this record's great. I mentioned it last update before. Recently I mentioned it, that I think this record's awesome. It's a bit of a cleaner, tighter Venom. They haven't really changed their sound at this point that much from their classic material with Kronos. It's a little bit better produced, maybe slightly leaning towards like the thrash bands that they were influencing. They do a great cover of Megalomania by Black Sabbath on the second side, which is cool. It doesn't sound like Tony Dolan singing, so maybe it's like a Baden or something. I don't know. I didn't look that up, but definitely a good record, worth checking out. And then a big one. Cool to have this. I have a reissue of it, like a dual CD kind of thing, but I got a chance to pick this up on cassette for a reasonable price, and I sprung for it. This is the debut from Sacrifice, Torment and Fire. I have like the next 3 records all on cassette, so it's one of those collector scum things. I thought I needed to pick it up. And also the Come to think of it, the CD has like some kind of weird remastering job on it that sounds a little odd, sounds a little off. But this is a good copy. It sounds great. It's just scrappy, fucking wiry, early 80s thrash metal that's got a real nice evil tinge to it. It doesn't sound like the Teutonic stuff necessarily, other than it's the same genre, or any of the quote-unquote first wave black metal bands, but it's very much in the same spirit. Great shit. All of their records after, the next 3 or 4 records after this are great too. Just something about those Canadian bands, like, not losing the plot for a very long time. These guys in Razor are fucking warriors. And then we've got Sacrilege from the UK. Important to note, the one from the UK, with Turn Back Trilobite. This came out on Metal Blade, 89. And their records before this are fucking awesome. Great, like, thrash metal, coming from the punk side of things, crossover kind of stuff. Great, like, haunting vocals from Tam, the vocalist. On this, it's cool to hear longer, not necessarily longer songs, because they're old songs. They have some long ones as well, but slower songs, more paced songs. Hear her kind of, like, stretch out her vocal abilities a little bit more. It's kind of doomy in an odd way. You can tell that they've been listening to a lot of Trouble. Sometimes it works for me, and sometimes it doesn't. I haven't exactly decided. The jury's still out on this. I've only listened to it a handful of times. It's not immediately kind of satisfying like their early records are, and their demos too. Another one where I'm kind of not sure how I feel about it yet. Armored Saint, March of the Saint. Early 80s Armored Saint stuff, 84. One thing I will say is that John Bush was always a fucking great vocalist. And he always kind of sang like that. Always had that kind of raspy, bluesy thing. You know, he never really, even early on in Armored Saint, like, tried to do a Bruce Dickinson or something like that. Great vocalist. Some of the songs on here are pretty good. Some of them I kind of checking my watch, if you know what I mean. I need to give it more listens. It's pretty decent. I still like Symbol of Salvation the most, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's like a 4 or 5 song live 12-inch that came out not long after this, maybe a year or 2 after this, that's really fucking good. Super, and I'm not a big fan of live recordings either, just super ass-kicking live record. Somewhat related, we have Anthrax with Attack of the Killer Bees here. I had this when it came out, loved it, listened to it into the ground. You know, odds and ends collection of covers and live stuff, and it's got the collaboration with Public Enemy on it, with Bring the Noise. They do a couple SOD songs on it. It's got some songs from Persistence of Time on it, Belly of the Beast. It's just it's a cool collection. It's a fun listen. They do like Ventures cover on it. They do Pipeline, Parasite by Kiss, Protest and Survive. That's an important one. They covered Discharge on this, and it was the first time I ever heard a Discharge song covered by anybody at all. It was my first exposure to that band, other than seeing their shirts being worn. So yeah, cool collection, kind of marking the end of the Joey Belladonna era of Anthrax. Kind of a good send-off, I'd say. Then we've got Hellstar with Nosferatu. This is a mid-80s on Enigma Records there. Enigma Metal Blade, another one on that famed label, produced by Bill Matoyer, you know, as a lot of things were back then. Just good blazing power/speed metal from Texas. Probably their best record. I've heard a few others. This one is probably the most energetic and catchy, but if you like good American speed and or power metal, I'd say it floats somewhere in between. You know, not to get too pedantic about it. This one, I was one of those had to have it from my youth, blah, 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 blah. Nostalgia pickups. I just needed to hear what this fucking band sounded like. One of those things where you get older and you grow up in a certain place and you remember hearing about local bands and you're like, what do they even sound like? You know, I never even got to see them, or, you know, you get this kind of, at least me, I get this sort of civic pride thing. And like, as you are probably aware, my hometown is known for hardcore, being from the same city as Earth Crisis. But there was a metal scene in Syracuse before all that kind of kicked off. And there were pretty big shows that would come through. It wasn't nearly as big or successful as like the Buffalo or Rochester kind of scenes, to a smaller extent, even Albany. But we did have bands, and we had bands like Sacred Death And I just remember seeing this like in the local section at my local record theater. You can't really read the text, but it's called Deadly Playground. Deadly Playground. It's like it kind of beat Korn to the punch there with that ominous playground kind of thing. And it's thrash, you know, but it's thrash circa 89, 90, 91. So it's like starting to kind of slow down. It's getting kind of chunky and rhythmic. You know, there's certain kind of prongish elements to it. The guy really sings, like he's got somewhat of a range, but he's still a thrash vocalist. Kind of sounds to me like almost like Sean Killian from Violence if he could sing better and sang a little bit more on time, but not perfectly on time. There's moments where I feel like it's pretty dated, but there's also some pretty good like up-tempo thrashing parts on it. And if I'm not mistaken, the drummer, Jeff Tortora, last time I checked, he was in the Blue Man group in Las Vegas. Just know that from local stuff. But yeah, cool to finally track this down. I wanted to hear it. As you can see on the channel here, if you look below, I've uploaded a few of my old band's demos. I intend to keep doing that just to preserve like stuff that I wasted years of my life destroying my voice on. So perhaps I'll rip this as well and throw it up there because it wasn't on YouTube. Part of the reason why I bought it. And then we've got new stuff in this pile right here. Next couple of tapes. Ripped to Shreds. Not sure what that says because I don't speak that language. They're a mostly one-man project. Andrew Lee is the chief songwriter. Gets live personnel both in the States and overseas to do this. It's really, really, really well done HM2 death metal stuff. Not strictly sticking to like a left-hand path kind of formula, but definitely utilizing that everything turned to the right, metal distortion pedal, lots of trem picking kind of thing, but just so tastefully written, real songwriting chops behind it, plenty of other influences other than, you know, the heavy hitters of Scandinavian death metal, and it shows, and it's very fucking good. And there's some guest spots on it as well. The main one I'm recognizing is Phil Tuga on lead guitar from Cathalist, I believe. So that's cool. Andrew Lee is also involved with this project. This is Azath, Through a Warren of Shadow. So this is a band whose lyrical themes revolve around an author named Steven Erikson and the Malazan Books of the Fallen, which was a very, very, very thick, very, very historically dense fantasy series that I gave up reading about 2.5 books in. The Warrens, if I remember right, are dimensional portals that the wizards open in the middle of the desert in the first couple of books. But you want to talk about like making Game of Thrones look like, you know, The Hobbit in terms of like the number of characters in it. There's just like fucking hundreds and hundreds of fucking characters. Like, it was one of those things where I had to give up after a while. The music on this is really, really fucking intense, very blast driven death metal. A little bit on the chaotic side, a little bit on the blurry side, pretty guttural vocals. But if you're down with anything, like, it's hard to come to a comparison for this kind of death metal. I mean, rhythmically, it's, you know, you could say, hey, do you like Brodickwin? Do you like Panzer Division Marduk? Like, because it's that level of like continuous blasting. With some, and when the breaks come though, they really hit hard. And I think that's a calculated, smart move. Like the non-blasting parts are super impactful. Very fucking cool death metal record. One of the better ones this year. Then we got another Northern Cali band here, Ulthar. This is the new one, Providence. Pretty much carrying along from the last one. This odd, you know, chaotic, sideways leaning, portal opening in their own right, kind of almost nightmarish and psychedelic death metal with black metal influences. God, I love that cover art. So fucking cool. And the thing is, like, stuff that gets super dissonant or whatever you want to call it, gets noisy and weird. Like, I don't really give a fuck about a lot of that stuff. I mean, it doesn't really do anything for me. But there's something about, especially the stuff that, like, Shelby Lermo writes. Just, somehow does that, but makes things super memorable too. I don't know how they do that. There's little like influences kind of trickling in. I've heard them quote rudimentary peni as a lyrical influence, and it might just be the general spirit of that really like odd, almost like eldritch Lovecraftian, you know, kind of otherworldly thing going on with it that really makes it pretty special and pretty cool. Got this World Tension. I was just spinning this a little bit earlier. This is a hardcore band from Las Vegas. Hardcore a little bit on the metal side, or a lot, depending on your definition of any of those things. Shifting parameters at all times. Yeah, great like metal guitar tone, some gallops and stuff like that. Kind of an angry hardcore punk edge. You know, you could probably go to like late 80s New York for some semblance of kind of what this sounds like. Maybe some modern bands like Terror. Very good stuff. Also for fans of like, I'd say like the more like hardcore leaning newer wave of thrash metal bands like Power Trip and stuff like that. Great dive bombs. The breakdown on the title track is one of the more terrifying ones that I've heard in quite a while. Super hard. Great cover art. Vegas band, Vegas label running in place. They gave some extras to my wife and she passed them on to me. I'll be talking about a 7-inch too in a minute. Other VCLT from Matt in the Dark Path. This is Ultimate Agony, Rotting Afterlife on Boris Records. Got some Boris Records swag, courtesy of Matt. This I really fucking enjoyed, and I need to listen to it a couple more times. With all this kind of real caveman, quote-unquote, shit getting popular from Maggot Stomp and some other labels like that, everybody likes that stuff quite a bit, the Sanguis Sugar Bogs of the world and related projects. Be sure you check out Ultimate Agony. It is about as like sloping forehead Cro-Magnon hunter-gatherer as you can get and still be death metal. Very, very fucking primal, you know, mid-pace to fast, but there's like some really, really punishing like Death Doom kind of stuff going on towards the end of this. It's fucking really good. I was really, really impressed with it. And then we've got, on the same label, on Boris, Morbid Slaughter from South America, I think Peru. This is black metal, kind of leaning towards very early black metal. It's got that that whispering goblin kind of vocal approach, to like, you know, that kind of thing. Almost where the guy isn't screeching, he's just like, hey, come here, I gotta tell you about something. It's but it's good. It's got like a sinister quality to it, and then like pretty basic, like pretty quick, pretty fast, like riffing on it and stuff like that. Very punkish, like that a lot. And I want to keep all that stuff together. There we go. Malformity, another Boris band. I'm gonna guess this band's from Atlanta. I'm not sure. 2-song 7-inch, 2-song single even. Straight up death metal. Some really good like oompa kind of beats on it. That like very basic, like not as basic as this, but still pretty like straightforward meat and potatoes kind of death metal stuff. Very early to mid 90s. Definitely dug that a lot. This I really like. Misanthropic Aggression. I like the other stuff too. But this is also very, very fucking cool. Keep forgetting about how good this is, and I need to spin it more, just like everything else I own. But Alcoholic Polyneuropathic Freaks in Hell. That song's very fucking grindcore. You know, you've got like some mid-range raspy stuff and some like deeper vocals going on. You know, kind of reminding me a little bit of Repulsion and Slaughter, but maybe a little bit more like technical. Then you've got like Retired from Life, Last Day of Work, which is almost like more of a like I don't know, foot on the bass amp, like rock out kind of metal song, but at the same time being death metal. Really fucking cool band. I actually went on Discogs and went to see like what else they had out, and it looks like they have a demo, and I might probably gonna buy it because I dig it. Then this is another one from the label that Amanda got some stuff from Running in Place. This is Moonblood. with Violent Acts. This is a feminist hardcore band, also from Las Vegas. I don't know. I tend to not judge a book by its cover, but looking at the cover art, I immediately thought like, oh, this must be like grind or something like maybe kind of stoner metal. I didn't know what it was. And also a band's called Moonblood. You know, there's a well-known black metal band called that. This is two separate words though, moon, space, blood. Anyway, I saw the record art, and it looked kind of reminded me of like maybe sort of like a Relapse kind of record or something. And it's not. It's actually really good, really fast, raw, stripped down hardcore punk with excellent lyrics about all the bullshit women have to fucking deal with, as well as a bunch of other personal topics. But super great lyrics on it. Very fucking pissed off vocal delivery, angry, raw, and occasionally like creepy crawl tempo, not all fast all the way through. Excellent fucking hardcore punk from Moonblood, Violent X. Then we got Video Filth. This I just picked up in a distro quite a while ago. These guys have been around the Boston scene for 5 years, 6 years. I'm trying to remember because one of them came over to my house when I still lived in Boston to dub some tapes of their demo, and they're great. They played in some other bands like Sadist at one point. I think this might be their main gig right now. Video Filth. Yeah, fucking awesome. Like if you like stuff like One Word Death Threat, Talk Is Poison, stuff like that. It's stuff that's really informed by Discharge and Poison Idea, but just played like almost flawlessly, so it almost becomes a different sound than those early Poison Idea and Discharge records. Not to say those bands couldn't play, because they could play their asses off, but almost tighter than that. It's just really fucking well executed, fast hardcore punk. Got this Aux Baker split, again courtesy of Mike. Aux Baker and Battle Unicron. Well, this is an interesting one. This is two very, very different bands. Aux Baker were a Canadian band that drew a lot of influences from a lot of the stuff that was, I think they were around in the late 90s up until the early 2000s, I think. Very influenced by a lot of the stuff that was going on at the time in like on Havoc Records, some of the stuff on Slap-A-Ham. Just very fast hardcore with like abrupt tempo changes. I wouldn't say power violence necessarily, but certainly influenced by a lot of that stuff. Fucking cool band that was around for a while, that Mike played in. And then Battle Unicron's just weird, very, very, very stripped down, like synthy Casio keyboard noise stuff, which isn't anything I can really tolerate for more than one side of a 7-inch, but while spinning this one side of the 7-inch, it was pretty cool. Mike also gave me this Witch's Hammer 7-inch. This is fucking cool as hell. I always forget about Witch's Hammer, and I recently corrected that by buying a bunch of stuff by them. I have the Stretching Into Infinity compilation on Nuclear War Now. I need to check out that new record, so I just recently ordered that, and they had another compilation, the Canadian Speed Metal LP, that I just snagged like last night. But just, man, again with Canada and that kind of metal shit, just so good. Fucking vicious, raw as fuck. This is a reissue of a 7-inch that came out, an EP that came out in '87, I think. This is on Supreme Echo, and yeah, everything that band did fucking kicks ass, and I'm told that the new one is no different. Just vicious fucking speed thrash stuff. One of the members went on to play in Blasphemy, if I'm not mistaken. And I just listened to this next to it. This is like a 7-inch compiling like 3 different studio recordings, 3 different songs that originally came out on Nuclear War Now, I think. And this isn't even part of anything. This just was next to all that. And it's in the pile, so I might as well talk about it. Then we've got Fiend, not Archfiend, Fiend. And this is one of those dug up from obscurity kind of deals. This is another Canadian band, courtesy of Mike. Also on Supreme Echo. Cool recording, pretty raw. You can hear everything that's going on. Might be practice. Sounds like it, but it sounds pretty good for that, if that's what it is. Comes with this great booklet with interviews. If you hear a weird noise in the background, it's because my dog is having a nightmare. Yeah, look at that. Fucking cool booklet. You know, one of these things where you can grab the record, throw it on, read stuff. You know, I love doing that when I have the time. Music is stripped down thrash metal, and you can tell they're definitely headed towards death metal as far as like the vocal execution, the speed, just the general aggression of the music. Really like that guy's polka dot shirt too. Really goes well with that guitar. Fucking rad. So that's it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little hot down. It's not hot like oppressive, like too bad, but it's a little nasty down here, and I'm all sweaty. Kind of struggled through this, but what are you gonna do? You know, I'm not in this for the glory. I'm in it for the love. Have a good night.